Hi, and welcome to the Financial Modeling Podcast. In Season 4, we explore what makes good financial modelers great. The ability to tell a story, being able to model legal nuances, using the financial model as an effective negotiating tool to close deals. These are just some of the skills we reveal as what you need to know to become a master financial modeler. Season 4 of the Financial Modeling Podcast is sponsored by Full Stack Modeler. Your journey into the future of financial modeling starts here.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Financial Modeling Podcast. I'm your host, Matthew Bernath. And Season 4 of the Financial Modeling Podcast is focusing on all of the other skills that you need to become a financial modeling master. Now, many financial modelers have learned a great deal over their time building complex financial models, and which wish to really monetize that expertise, perhaps become freelancers, perhaps build their own businesses, or perhaps want to travel the world as a financial modeling expert. Well, Roderick McKinley, our guest on the show today, has actually done all of those things. Roderick established his career in financial modeling, specifically modeling power demand, pricing winning bids in Chilean energy auctions, ranging portfolio level project finance deals, and even most recently, tokenomic modeling for blockchain projects, which will definitely be a future topic on the podcast. Well, for the past 4 years, Roderick has leveraged his modeling skills to live a digital nomad lifestyle. He's been traveling the world, he's been a freelancer, and he's been living in some pretty remote and pretty exotic locations. So, Roderick, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been a fan of the show for a long time, so it's a pleasure to finally have made it on here. Thank you.
Roderick, that means a lot, especially coming from a world traveler such as yourself. I know you've worked all over the world. You've worked on fascinating projects all over the world. You've lived all over the world. Where can we find you at the moment?
Oh, I'm currently on the island of Koh Phangan in Thailand, which I've been. This is actually the least I've traveled in the past 5 years. I found a good place to stay while this whole situation raged on, and I've been lucky enough to be able to stick with it. And yeah, love it.
Maybe just a quick stat before we get into the actual podcast. How many countries, if you can count offhand, have you actually worked in and worked on deals in?
Well, actually, this goes back to when I was an employee, and I wanted to take a Christmas holiday, and it was sort of like, oh, we're not so sure. There was a wedding in India, and they're like, okay, look, if you take your computer with you, and I remember vividly, I was sitting down, I had like roosters or chickens around my feet, and I was like trying to crunch some, price contracts for wind farms, and this is going on. I'm like, this is so strange. So, including those places, I don't know, 1, 2, 3. We're talking upwards of 20. I literally have to count them on my hands. Brazil, India, Nepal, Malaysia, Indonesia, South Africa. Went to Cape Town for a wedding there. Costa Rica, Mexico. Yeah, lots of places. Mostly exploring Latin America and Southeast Asia, I'd say. It's been incredible.
I'm sure. So Roderick, you've done two things that many financial modelers have perhaps thought about during their careers. You've gone freelance, and in that effect are running your own business. But secondly, you've also become this digital nomad who's been able to travel the world and work on all these different deals. So let's talk about the freelancing item first. Why do you think more financial modelers don't go the freelance route? What do you think is stopping them from doing that? And what advice could you give to a financial modeler who's thinking, well, maybe it's time to try it on my own?
Yeah, so these are excellent questions. And the fact is, I didn't leave planning to become a freelancer. It happened by accident. And the reason why it happened by accident was because I did not believe it would be possible. to work as a freelancer. So my financial modeling experience was very much in the kind of financial deal making world, where a lot of the information is highly sensitive, very time sensitive as well, high pressure. And I just made an assumption that I wouldn't be able to garner trust from people in a remote work setting. I mean, this is also, bear in mind, this is 5 years ago. I think the conversation has substantially shifted. There was also a concern for me about work-life balance. I was burnt out. I'd been putting 20-hour days regularly, and I'd had enough. It wasn't even a question of money anymore. I just didn't want that. And so there were also some doubts about my ability to source work that would be respect the new boundaries and limits I was setting for myself. So I think this idea about us having this narrow view of us being committed to an old school office culture of presenteeism, and also if you're in the deal making world, very sort of, I think you're fashioned to follow a very hierarchical, command-driven management structure. All of these things made me think this is not going to be a fit for me. I can't make this work remote, and I was actually going to do what you've done, which is transition into a data science role. What changed was error number one: don't make assumptions. Ask people, talk to people, don't assume you know it. And people from my old network, once they found out that I was out and about, passed me stuff, and yeah, sometimes I still had to grind a bit, but there I was, doing it from halfway across the world, in a beautiful location in Thailand, which is where I started out as well. Yeah, I think we assume that people aren't ready for this, and they are. I've even I got approached by an M&A, a boutique M&A group that's entirely distributed. The lawyers in south of France, one of the senior deal originators is in the English countryside. Things are changing fast. So that's why I don't think people do it, is because they're still stuck in the old way of thinking. In terms of tips, I started pointing to some now. Get in touch with your old network, speak to people, let them know that you're looking for a change. And there's already a lot of trust built up in your old network. They'll be more open to you wanting to do something else. And then, I mean, there are work platforms you can sign on to that offer you a lot of financial modeling work. It's tricky. That's a whole process in itself. Some are sort of like really bargain bucket experiences where you're competing with a lot of very cheap or cost competitive talent, with bosses who are looking for cheap work. So those aren't great, but maybe a place for you to find future leads that you can cultivate and develop. So those would be places like Upwork, Freelancer. Then you have some Graphite started out as a dedicated financial modeling remote workplace. They vet their candidates, so that's a good place to find for work. TopTal has a very demanding screening process. I haven't passed it yet because every single time I get a shot, I'm busy with something else. They test for a very specific kind of modeling skill set. My recommendation would be to be prepared to just take down really, really thorough notes and practice that over and over again until you pass it. Their practice tests don't give you any clue what's coming, unfortunately. So, and then what's the other one? Go Catalant, I think, sources quite a bit of financial modeling work. And then the other thing you can do is what you're doing, what I'm doing on the side as well, which is building a content journey. Be proactive on social media. Talk about financial modeling problems that you solve for clients, and be visible and try and create content. I think that's the longest journey to take, but when it works, it can be one of the most rewarding, because then you're finding really good fit between you and your clients, and it's a great way of building trust. So I think that's where I'd stop as a bunch of first recommendations. Yeah.
I think those are some great recommendations. Look, it's firstly fantastic to hear that there are these platforms out there that help, financial modelers and freelancers. And I think you're right on the content journey. I think a lot of people find it a bit daunting. And my advice is always to people just to get going. I got going on the podcast, didn't really know what I was doing, and now heading towards episode number 70. And I think you just get into a rhythm over time. Roderick, you're a digital nomad. So you've traveled the world, you've worked on all these different deals. Now, project finance modeling is certainly a type of modeling that seems to be pretty similar globally, but except for perhaps tax implications. Are all financial modeling disciplines similar to this that can be transported, or is there one form of financial modeling discipline that you think is more easily transported to different cultures and different countries?
I'm so happy you asked this, because I think this has been one of the biggest parts of my learning journey. Given that I started without sort of a client portfolio, I could have, the way some people would have done this, and I think it's a very commendable approach. I'm a project finance modeler, so I'm building up a client book, and I would do project finance stuff. And that's great, because project finance is high ticket, really highly bespoke. Because I kind of landed in this by accident, I had to find my clients where they came, and suddenly I was working on very different kind of briefs, from things like startup, seed capital, Series A capital, FP&A briefs, and when you're out there, it's great. You just have to say, right, we have to do this. Now, where project finance was a remarkable asset to me was that you have to become a good Excel engineer in order to pull off a good project finance model. I think financial modeling is this really curious sort of mix of talents that you have to bring together, and one of them is Excel engineering and model design, and those are really highly developed by project finance. But then you get to something, a Series A raise or a startup raise, and the model's so much more about storytelling. And you have all of these tools in your tool chest. You could do all of this amazing stuff. It's not needed. It's not needed. And you need to understand sort of what does this tool actually need to do. And even though you may be one of the most technically skilled people, you have to learn this entirely different soft skill set of figuring out, what does this thing need to do to get us over the line for this client? Project finance will level you up that way. And then the rest of it, just go online, figure out, look at some of these. What I think Eloquence is a great library of different model templates. And if you go there, if you come from a project finance background, you may be surprised at how simple a lot of the modeling tools are that people use, but it adds a lot of value when done in the right way. Just talking to clients, getting to know what they need, all of that starts coming in if you start freelancing to a broader set of clients. Yeah.
It's great to actually hear the word Excel engineer. I always call myself an Excel nerd, but I think I prefer the term Excel engineer. I'm going to be using that in future.
Let's level up. It's engineering. It really is. The trick Excel pulls off extremely well is that it tricks you into coding without you realizing that that's what you're doing. And the deeper you go down this rabbit hole, you are basically marshaling the same sort of skill sets that a coding engineer would use. And that's when you get some real powerful stuff. You're an Excel engineer. Yeah.
I love it. Roderick, my final question to you is this. So you mentioned, becoming visible, building content, social media, etc. What do you think is the one tool that people should master who want to become a freelancer or a digital nomad? If we have to look at all the different, tools out there to almost have a profile on, we've got LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, different freelancing websites. What do you think is the most important tool for people to focus on if they only have to focus on one platform?
For outreach, I'm still convinced LinkedIn is fantastic for what we do. I can't speak from the experience of having tried all those other platforms. You've told me that Instagram works phenomenally well with you. So LinkedIn, unless you already are very comfortable with another platform, in which case just try building your footprint from where you are there. But there's so much automation that is going into LinkedIn search. If you work your LinkedIn profile, if you understand that bots are looking for keywords, I redid my profile recently to fit a blockchain thing, and then I started getting some very surprisingly big shot offers coming in. So I'd say that, but I'm biased by my own experience. Yeah.
Absolutely. I do agree with you. I think LinkedIn is a great place to showcase your profile, to showcase your skills, your expertise, and what deals you've worked on as a financial modeler.
Absolutely. Yeah, and connecting.
Yes, connecting and networking as well. Roderick, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast today. Some really great tips to anybody who wants to become a freelancer or a digital nomad or both. And hopefully we'll see more of that in the future. I think it's definitely become something that's a far more popular topic than when you started doing it so many years ago.
Yeah, no. 4-Hour Workweek was published in 2008, and it's we've taken this long for the conversation to become mainstream. It's real, and it's a great time to make a change.
I agree. Roderick, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me once again, Matthew. Cheers.
The world is changing. Financial modeling is no longer just about Excel, and yet Excel modeling skills have never been more valuable. The Full Stack Modeler is an online learning and membership community for finance professionals who are ready to embrace the future. We created Full Stack because we believe that finance professionals need to master Excel, need to master modeling, and need to master all the technologies around Excel, and even that isn't enough. We also need to master the softer skills: communicating, presenting, listening, influencing. Sign up for our short email sequence at fullstackmodeler.com, and you'll get the chance to do a full audit of your modeling skill set and find out if the Full Stack journey might be for you. If it is, use the offer code podcast at checkout to get 10% off your membership.